Welcome, dear participant. Welcome back to the final topic on this workshop, NMR spectroscopy. Though it is the final topic, but it is the most powerful and most useful technique as far as structural elucidation is concerned. Let us go one by one. And this technique is called as nuclear magnetic resonance technique. The name itself explains what this technique is all about. It considers the nuclei. So far we have considered electronic excitation between different energy level in UV and the electronic excitation in IR. All those things are electronic excitation. In here we are going to see the nuclei. But what kind of nuclei we are going to see? Right. We cannot see all the nuclei, or we cannot record an NMR spectrum for all the nuclei. For a nuclei to be NMR active, it has to have a half integral. Right. An odd number of protons or odd number of neutrons are both are essential for nuclear to be studied in NMR. We are going to study the nuclei. We are not going to study the whole molecule, but by studying the nuclei, it gives the information about the whole molecule. That is the beauty of that, and therefore we are studying. What we are studying? We are studying the nuclear spin. Why we are studying nuclear spin? And this nuclear spin and Larmor precession. Why? And because what we are using here is the radio wave. The radio wave can able to excite the nucleus between the spin states, and that is why we are studying the nuclear spin. Right. We must know the nuclear spin. That is, the nuclear spin should be half integral. For example, proton, carbon 13, fluorine 19, nitrogen 15, phosphorus 31. There are several nucleus which are NMR active. But can we able to study all these nucleus in a single experiment, in a single instrument? That is another question, has to be discussed in very detail, because a lot of things are involved. Because the natural abundance of the nuclei and the gyromagnetic ratio of the nuclei, all this plays a very important role for the sensitivity of the nuclei to be recorded in NMR spectra. Right. Let us not consider that now, because we are concentrating more on the structural elucidation. I request you, all of you, to study the theories by yourself, and I have given some of the videos for you that will be most useful to understand the NMR spectroscopy in clear. NMR spectroscopy is a version that I would say it is expanding its limit, expanding, and it is current technique, right? And therefore it is a version. I could not deal it within a few. And therefore, whatever required for our structural elucidation and some principle, we will see here. Other things you can learn by yourself, right? I have explained what type of nuclear. Since it is nuclear magnetic resonance, there are three words, and these three words are self-explanatory about the experiment. And therefore, we are studying the nuclei, especially the nuclear spin. We are studying nuclear spin with half integrals, usually studied in this technique. And when radio wave is applied, the nuclear spin will be flipping from one state to another state. Then why we need a magnetic field? The role of magnetic field is this. We are going to see in different. It uses magnetic field. I don't like to explain here itself, because we are going to see all of them in detail. There is a role of magnetic field, and we have different types of magnet involved in this technique. That's why it is magnetic. And there is a resonance. When there is a resonance with the radio wave, that radio wave will be absorbed. Otherwise, the radio wave will not be absorbed. This is another key. And that's why it is called as a nuclear magnetic resonance. These three words are very, very important, are heart of the NMR technique. That's why they call it as a nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy. Right, let us see one by one. Nuclei, nuclear spin, usually half integrals, that is proton, carbon 13, fluorine 19, phosphorus 31, this kind of nucleus. And nuclear spin, every nucleus has a spin. When it spin, it generates it has an energy, it has a frequency, all those things. It has an energy with which it spins. But all the nuclei of usually we record proton. If all the proton has same energy, almost close to same energy, degenerate energy, and if all the energy levels are degenerate, then how can we excite the one energy level to another? Spin states are degenerate. That is the problem with respect to nucleus, and therefore we need a magnetic field. In absence of magnetic field, all the nuclear spin states are degenerate. When magnetic field is applied, before magnetic field, I would like to say one more thing. They are random and degenerate. Random means they orient in different direction according to the electronic environment in which it is present and the structure of the molecule. All the protons are oriented and randomly, and but all of them have same energy. But when magnetic field is applied, the random orientation is disturbed, and they are supposed to align with the magnetic field, external magnetic field. Either align or oppose the magnetic field. And one more thing happens, it start to precess. I will explain in the next slide what is called a precession. It start to precess. These two things happens, right? And therefore splitting of energy level takes place. That means when those protons, those nuclei that align with the external magnetic field get lower energy, and those protons, due to its chemical environment or magnetic environment or electrostatic environment that opposes the external magnetic field, has high energy. Right? This is how there is a splitting of energy level takes place. And this splitting of energy level is a key where the radio wave can be absorbed and it can be excited, and therefore that nuclear excitation can be studied by NMR. Otherwise the nuclei cannot be studied by NMR. And that's why magnetic field is an important integral part of NMR spectroscopy. Then only you can able to make excitation between spin states. Otherwise the radio wave will not be absorbed, and there is no possibility of excitation. If there is no possibility, then you cannot record the spectra. That's why we need a magnetic field, right? And this is what is called, you can see here the hydrogen spins, the proton spins. Okay, can you able to see the spin? This is called the spin. You can see here the hydrogen spins. At the same time it presses, right? This, like you can see, this is called precession. If it completes one cycle, that is called one cycle. How many cycles it completes per second? That is called the Larmor frequency. And this precession of the nuclei will start when magnetic field is applied. Before magnetic field, it will have a spin, but it will not have a precession. This precession only you can have in presence of a magnetic field. When this magnetic field is applied, it will be, if you take it is applied in z-axis, for example. If it is applied in z-axis, and all the protons will be aligned in z-axis, either aligned in, right, aligned with the magnetic field, oppose the magnetic field, that's different, but all of them will be in z-axis, right? This is called a Larmor precession. Right, this you can see there are different nuclei here in orienting in different direction. There is random direction. in the absence of magnetic field. No field here. When external magnetic field is applied, H is 0, then there are protons, 1, 2, 3. There are 3 protons which align with the magnetic field. There are 2 protons which opposes magnetic field, and therefore separation of the spin states takes place. In absence of field, both spin are degenerate, either align or oppose. Both are degenerate. But in the presence of magnetic field, it is aligns with the magnetic field and it opposes the magnetic field, right? And therefore a separation. If the magnetic field strength is low, then separation is also minimum. If the magnetic field strength is high, then separation also maximum. And therefore the separation of energy level depends upon the strength of magnetic field, right? Those who aligns gets lower energy, those who opposes get higher energy. Here, when radio wave is applied here to this nucleus, it will flip its spin and go to this state. When it go to this state, it will come back again to the original state, where it will relax its energy, and that relaxed energy is recorded using a recorder. This is how NMR spectrum is recorded, and during this process, the signal carries information about the structure of the molecule that we will see in coming slides. Right, it has a magnetic field that I have explained already. Why we use magnetic field? Without magnetic field, radio wave will not be absorbed. Radio is not absorbed because there is no splitting of the energy levels. When there is energy level split, then only radio wave is absorbed. When radio wave is absorbed, it can go to excited state, then it can relax, all the process can take place. Otherwise, there is no absorption, and therefore magnetic field is essential in nuclear magnetic. But in case of electronic state, earlier we discussed IR, UV. There already we have a low energy state, excited electronic state, vibrational states are there already, and therefore we need not use any magnetic field here. But here it is nuclear spin, which all of them have degenerate electronic field. Therefore we need a magnetic field. And that we are speaking about the external magnetic field. Apart from that, there are other magnetic field in the molecule itself. One magnetic field, there are 3 magnetic field involved in this technique. That is, we apply an external magnetic field, and then the third, each nucleus, that is each spinning nucleus, and this spinning nucleus, that means a proton has a positive charge. When the positive charge spins, it produces a magnetic field across that, and therefore each nuclei is considered as a tiny bar magnet. That you can consider this with the experiment in physics. Be doing tan A tan B experiment, where you will be having a bar magnet, and you will have a campus magnet, which we will be the influence of the bar magnet with the campus magnet is studied in a different position. That is called we can see that there is an interaction between these two, and similarly with the external magnetic field, this tiny bar magnet, that is the nuclei, will interact with the magnetic field, right? And there is another magnetic field that is generated by anisotropic electronic cloud. There is a distribution of electronic, when there is unequal distribution of electron cloud in the molecule, that can also generate a magnetic field there, and these are all collectively decide the position of the signal and all those things, right? The NMR signal carries all this information, right, that we are studying. And talking about the external magnet, we can use, there are 2 magnets possible. One is permanent magnet, another one is electromagnet. We can use a permanent magnet. That would be ideal to use, because every change in the magnetic field can affect the spectrum, and therefore using a permanent magnet is a good idea. But what is the problem with this is we could not have a permanent magnet that can split the energy level so high to absorb a radio wave radiation. We do not have any permanent magnet which can produce that much. For example, 10,000 gas or 1 Tesla or 1.5 Tesla, that much amount of magnetic field this experiment needed. There is no permanent magnet which can produce that much amount of magnetic field, and therefore it is necessary, it is necessary to use only the electromagnet. The problem with the electromagnet is this, that voltage fluctuation, we usually have voltage fluctuation in our power supply, and therefore the voltage fluctuation will lead to a disturbance in the magnetic field, change in magnetic field, and that change in magnetic field definitely will affect the spectrum. And therefore, in order to make a static magnetic field, it is very, very difficult. That's why NMR instrument is costly, right? And there is resonance. The third word about this is resonance. When there should be resonance between radio wave frequency and the Larmor frequency of the nuclei for the radiation to be absorbed. Otherwise, the radiation will not be absorbed, right? Whenever there is a resonance, that is, the nuclei has a Larmor frequency, it has a frequency, and the radio wave radiation have a frequency. When there is a match between these two, then the radio wave will absorb. Otherwise, the radio wave will not be absorbed. And therefore, there are two types of instrument. The keeping the magnetic field, the radio wave constant, and sweeping the magnetic field is one technique. Another technique is keeping the magnetic field constant and sweeping the frequency. That means, if you keep the magnetic field constant, right, then you will sweep the magnetic field from one range. As usual we do in IR or NMR, we will scan from one radiation to another radiation. When if you take an example CH3, CH2OH, the CH3 proton will absorb at one region and CH2 proton will absorb another region, OH will absorb another region, right? Similarly, and therefore, when the frequency change will make the proton, the nuclei to absorb the radio energy when it is swept, like that is one method, keeping the magnetic field, because CH3 and CH3 Larmor precession will be different from CH2, and that's how it works. And therefore, it may be close, not too far, but you have to record the radiation, which radiation absorbed and which radiation is not absorbed, that we have to study. If you sweep, all the radiation will be absorbed. If we sweep, for example, if CH3 absorb at 60 megahertz radiation, then CH2 may absorb at 61 or 62, whatever it is. That is the difference you can study. This is how you can record in NMR spectra, but usually that is not done. Usually, because it is sweeping the electromagnetic radiation. The electromagnet is easy. By changing the volt, we can able to change the electromagnet, and therefore we keep the frequency constant, like 60 megahertz or 100 megahertz or 200 megahertz or 400 megahertz. You keep radiation constant, and we will sweep the magnetic field. If we sweep the magnetic field, the energy gap between the spin state will also increase. While it increasing, when it matches with the radio wave frequency, if you are using a 60 megahertz instrument, if the energy gap of the nuclei just reaches the energy difference that matches with the 60 megahertz radio wave radiation, then the radiation will absorb. If you further increase the radiation, another proton that will reach the 60 megahertz radiation, and therefore the spectrum will be recorded with respect to time. And that, right, not with respect to magnetic field, with respect to time. when magnetic field is swept. This is how NMR spectra is recorded. This is called continuous wave, CW NMR, continuous wave NMR. Right, these are all theoretical part. It was used earlier, but nowadays it is not the case. Since frequency is kept constant and magnetic field is swept, that kind of instrument are named with respect to the radio wave. Right, 60 megahertz, 100 megahertz, 200 megahertz. Why we need this different? The 60 megahertz instrument will have with a very low magnetic field, it can record all kind of protons. What is the problem here? Since the magnetic field is very close, the signals will appear for different protons will appear close to each other, and sometimes in some big molecules the signals of different protons may overlap each other, and therefore we have to go for higher frequency. When you increase the frequency of the radiation, then you have to increase also the strength of the magnetic field. When strength of magnetic field is increases, the energy gap increases. All these increase will also expand the gap between the signals, and therefore you can get clear signals. The overlapping of the signal can be avoided when you increase the magnetic field or frequency of the instrument. That's why since you are if you want to increase the frequency, then you have to increase the magnetic field, and therefore the instrument becomes bigger and costly, and therefore the strength of magnetic field also increases, and the cost of the instrument also increases. Therefore we have to produce a big electromagnet, and therefore you need a different technology for each. Therefore, right, and this is the reason why we have different instrument to get a clear spectra for bigger molecules. If it is a very small molecule, a 60 megahertz instrument will serve your purpose. You need not go for 900 megahertz. If your molecule is bigger and complicated, when there is overlap of signal, then you have to go for a higher frequency instrument. That is one way. Right. Nowadays we don't use the CW frequency sweep. No. Now we are using FT-NMR. What is FT-NMR? All the radio wave frequency. There are different radio wave frequency pulse is created at a single radiation. A single radiation pulse is given at a time. At a time, all the protons in the molecule will get excited and get relaxed, and during relaxation it gives this kind of signal, which is called during relaxation, which is called as a free induction decay, and the decay pattern is recorded for each proton, and that decay is converted into a spectrum using Fourier transform series in mathematics. Right, that's why it is called as FT-NMR. In order to convert this signal into an NMR spectrum, we use a Fourier transform series in mathematics. That's why it is called as a FT-NMR. All these, that FT technique is sophisticated technique and involves several small things that has to be taken care. The small things can be modified to take different spectra. For example, the time of pulse is important, is another technique, and the frequency is, by changing frequency you can change by changing the time of pulse you can able to change a different technique. By changing the time, by allowing the time for relaxation, and the excited nucleus will relax back to the right. What I can say is, when an RF, as I have already said, when the nuclei is placed in a magnetic field, it will align itself in the x-axis or z-axis. When a 90-degree pulse in x-axis or in other 90-degree, when a radio wave pulse is given, this precession will change into xy plane. XY plane immediately when radio wave pulse is given. The precessional direction changes to XY plane. From that XY plane, it slowly relaxes back to the Z axis again. And that is called the relaxation process. At the time of pulse, in the XY plane, it has this much amount of frequency, and it slowly relaxes and come back to the original. That has been explained in the video that I have given you as useful links. You can go and watch there how it is done. This is how the chemical shift value, the relaxation process, all this will give you the chemical shift value of the NMR. This is what is called a FT NMR. Right, then this is how each proton in the molecule gives a signal. But when a proton gives one signal, the signal usually split into different lines. That is, a signal split into 2, a signal split into 3, a signal split into 4, like that. It splits into different patterns. How this splitting takes place? This is due to spin-spin coupling. That is, when a proton gives a signal, it relaxes its energy. When it relaxes its energy, if there is any other nuclei present adjacent to it, that is to 1 or 2 Armstrong distance, between 2 Armstrong distance, it can relax. If there is one more proton there, the relaxed energy can be absorbed by the neighboring proton, and this is called relaxation, spin-spin relaxation. This is called spin-spin relaxation. That energy can affect, and therefore there are different kinds of possibilities, and therefore the signal splits. Similarly, when a neighboring proton can also relax, and that energy can be transferred here, and there are that is due to the population, that can be explained by the different population by the spin. For example, if you consider 3 hydrogens, there are 3 neighboring hydrogen. I am not talking about you think there is a one proton that gives a signal. Adjacent to that one proton, there are 3 other protons. 3 other protons which are adjacent to the protons. So when this proton relaxes its energy, it can give its energy to 3 other protons. When it gives energy to the 3 other protons, they can take different orientations. They have energy differences. Some of them may be oriented aligned with the external magnetic field. Some of them may be there are different possibilities of the protons. The possibility for the the possibility, what we call it as a probability density of the spin state, depending on that we have different. When there is a 3 proton, the probability is this one spin state is this, and there are 3 kinds of spin state like this, and therefore the population is higher here. You can see here 3, but here it is 9. Here it is 9 spin states. There is a 3. If you see the ratio, it is 1:3:3:1, and therefore the signal of the proton by coupled by these 3 other protons, and it splits the energy into 3 in the relaxation process. During the relaxation process, it splits the energy like this because of different spin states, and this is called a spin-spin coupling. Due to this coupling, energy relaxed. Due to this coupling, splitting of signal takes place, and therefore splitting of signals usually depends upon number of protons that couple with this proton. Right? If one proton is coupled, then there are 2 possibilities. Therefore, the signal will get split into 2. If 2 protons couple, then there is a possibility of 3 different spin possibility of spin states population. Then you get 3 splitted into 3. If 3 protons couple with the proton, then it will split into 4, and so on. Usually the formula is n plus 1. These are the different, only this one kind of spin state, and the intensity will be like this, right? This is only one possibility of this arrangement, and therefore only and that much. There are 3 times, and therefore this signal will be 3 times higher than this, right? These two are equal, therefore these two signals will be equal in population, and therefore this is the reason why the spin split. This is called J coupling. This type of coupling is due to bond, because the bond distance is around 1 to 2 Armstrong. This is very close for the relaxation energy to be transferred. If it is more than 2-3 Armstrong, this kind of relaxation energy cannot affect, and therefore the protons are away from 2 or 3 bonds, 4 Armstrong, right? 2 to 3 bonds. It can affect only 1 to 2 bonds. More than 3 bonds, maximum 3 bonds, maximum 3 bond distance, 3 Armstrong or 4 Armstrong. A distance greater than 4 Armstrong, the relaxation energy cannot reach them, and therefore it will not affect. And therefore this type of coupling is called as a J coupling, right? Then what are the factors that affect the chemical shift in the NMR spectroscopy? We have seen that the relaxation that gives the chemical shift value. We shall see what are the factors that affect the chemical shift value. We have already seen the chemical shift value, that the shift in the signal is due to magnetic field, that I have already seen, the external magnetic field, nuclear, the anisotropic electron cloud, all these things shift the signal, and that is called chemical shift. Apart from that, what other the magnetic field that we are keeping constant in an instrument, that will not therefore affect, and the chemical environment in which it is present is the important factor that gives us some structural information. The anisotropic of magnetic field by the neighboring bonds or ring currents, they will affect the chemical shift value, and pi electron clouds, triple bonds and aromatic rings, they also affect electric field gradient, charge on the molecule also affect electronegativity, electropositivity, all these affect hydrogen bonding, affect solvent affect, and the electron cloud of electronegative atoms, and these are the factors that affect the chemical shift value. We will see one by one in the coming week. Then what are the structural information we can get from NMR? Actually, we have seen UV spectra, mass spectra, IR spectra so far. In mass spectra, we have used molecular ion peak, base peak, isotopic peak, and some of the fragments to get structural information. We don't consider each and every peak in mass spectra. We use some of the peak which will give some information to us. We will leave all other peaks. Similarly, in UV, we get only few peaks in UV. That too is not straight away giving any information, and therefore we consider the shape of the peak and we lambda max, and we try to calculate and try to find out whether it is pi to pi star or n to pi star, like that. But in IR, we consider the peaks above 1500, and we try to find out the stretching frequency, and that too cannot give concrete information. We have made a zone analysis in the previous class. By seeing the peak, we just eliminate the possibilities. There are several possibilities a peak can give, and therefore that do not give concrete information, and we use our brain to fix the kind of stretching, and that too below 1500 centimeter we just leave all other peaks. But NMR is not like that. That's what I am going to say. NMR, every peak gives information, every shape gives concrete information, the peak intensity gives concrete information, everything gives information about the molecule. And that's why NMR is the most powerful technique. The position of chemical shift value gives concrete information. The number of signal, how many signals are there, that gives concrete information, and the intensity of the signal gives concrete information, and the coupling pattern gives information. Every peaks give information, every shape gives information, every intensity gives information, and therefore we don't leave any peak in NMR for structural elucidation, right? That's why, for example, position of signal gives the chemical environment in which, whether it is with electronegative atom, whether it is in aromatic ring, whether it is with oxygen, whether it has hydrogen bonding, all this information is gained by position of the signal. That is what we call as a chemical shift. What the number of signal gives, for example, if there are three different protons are in three different carbons, but all the three protons are in same type of environment, or chemical environment or magnetic environment, all of them together will give only one signal, right? We will see as we progress in the examples, we can see how it is done. And therefore the number of signal also gives information. If more proton gives one signal, that means they are in identical situation, chemical environment, that information it is giving, right? Number of sets, number of signal is equal to, not is equal to number of proton, it is number of set of protons, number of different sets, number of different chemical environment present in the molecule. That's what we can infer from number of signals. And if there is only one signal, all the protons in the molecule has to be symmetrically shaped, symmetrically placed in the same place, same environment. That is very, very important. If there are two signals, all the protons in the molecule has to be splitted into two types of chemical environment, like that. That information you can get from number of signals. And intensity of signal, every intensity of the signal gives the relative amounts of number of hydrogen present in the molecule, or number of nuclei present in the molecule, especially hydrogen, right? And then the splitting signals, the splitting pattern gives the number of hydrogen present adjacent to the proton. If there is a doublet, if the signal splits into two, that is called a doublet. That means there is one proton adjacent to this proton. If there is a triplet, that means if there is a triplet, that is the signal splits into three, that is called a triplet, then that means there is two protons adjacent to this proton. Similarly, we get many information about adjacent protons based on the splitting pattern, right? What are the application of the NMR? It has variety of application. It is a powerful tool for structural elucidation. Therefore, the structure is elucidated, confirmed using NMR technique. And therefore, it is a powerful tool. As I explained, each peak, each shape, each pattern, each intensity gives information. Using that information, it is easy for us to deduce the structure for molecule. And like other technique, UV-IR, it can also used for purity checking and identification of compounds, for comparing and identification compounds. NMR can also do all those things. It can able to differentiate between aromatic, aliphatic. It can able to differentiate between intramolecular hydrogen bonding, intermolecular hydrogen bonding, all those things it can able to do. It can able to study the stereochemistry of the compound, whether it is cis, whether it is trans, or all those things can be studied using NMR spectra. The protein folding structure can be studied, biomolecules. MRI, we usually take MRI to study the brain function of a human. That is none other than NMR, right? It has variety of application, and there are several 2D techniques we have, and the NMR is growing day by day, and it is unlimited as far as now as the application is unlimited for NMR, because it is a current field, right? What is an NMR spectrum look like? I have finished the theory, because the theory is also, there are more path, there are more calculation involved. there are more physics involved, because there are more magnetism involved, there are several many things involved, but since we are discussing only the structure, few principle I have given. Let us see the NMR spectrum, because that is the main aim of the workshop, right? It is an absorption spectrum. The absorption between chemical shift, it is the spectrum, the image, the graph drawn between chemical shift versus absorption is called an NMR spectra. In x-axis we will be taking ppm, that is called chemical shift in ppm, and absorption in y-axis. The chemical shift value is calculated using this formula. The frequency of absorption, chemical shift value of the frequency of sample, the frequency of reference, using this formula into 10 power 6, this is how we get the value of ppm, that is delta value. And this is the ppm value also calculated using the frequency of the sample that we get and the spectrophotometer frequency. Because we are recording in a different spectrum, we need to have a common scale, and therefore the frequency is divided by spectrometer frequency. Then you can get a NMR spectrum that can be studied by everybody. Even if you measure the spectrum using different instrument, you can be able to study. That's why these two formulas are used to make all the spectrum common, make all the spectrum uniform, even if it is recorded in a different spectrum. This is the formula used to calculate, right? And what to see an NMR spectrum? What you have to see when you see NMR spectrum? You see what is the number of signals? 2, 3, 4, 5. That number is important. And secondly, what is the chemical shift value of each spectrum? If there is 4 signal, what is the chemical shift value of each? All the 4 signals. And what is the signal? All the 4 are singlet, or one is triplet, one is singlet, another one is doublet, another one is quadruplet, like that. You have to see the multiplicity of the signal, and you also have to see the intensity of the signal. The intensity actually is not directly the height of the signal. The intensity is calculated using integrals, that is area under the curve. The area under the curve is directly proportional to the intensity of the signal. The ratio of the intensity will give the number of hydrogen in each signal, number of nuclei. Right, let us see some example. You can see here, this is an example of acetone. There are CH3, there are 6 proton in acetone. Here CH3, here 6,3. Therefore, there are 6 protons. As I said already, all the 6 proton together gives only one signal. There are 6 proton, therefore the height is this much, highly intense. You can able to see here, the height is very, very high, because there are 6 protons, and it gives only one signal, because all the 6 protons are in same environment. These 2 CH3 are between the carbonyl, both are same. Chemically they are same, or magnetically they are same. Therefore, all the 6 proton will give only one signal. Since all these set of proton gives only one signal, there is no neighboring. If there is a different nuclei, different set of nuclei, then there will be interaction. There won't be interaction between same protons with the same magnetic field. They excite at the same way, they relax at the same pace. There won't be any coupling between them, right? When the protons that excite at the same frequency, at the same magnetic field, will not couple each other, because they relaxes at a time, they excite at a time, they relax at a time. There is no relaxation, there is no transfer of energy, and therefore the signal will not split. Right? When there is a lower energy proton there, the transfer energy can affect them. They will get excited, and lead to coupling of the signal. Here, so protons with the same magnetic environment or chemical environment, they are not splitted, they are not involved in coupling, right? Though if it is in 1 bond or 2 bond distance, whatever it is, 3 bond distance, whatever it is, if they are in same magnetic field, they do not couple, and therefore they give only one signal. This is one example. Let us take another example for explaining the number of signal. Here, this is the signal of butane. Butane, you can see there are 10 hydrogen in butane. All the 10 hydrogen collectively give only 2 signals. That this altogether one signal, this is altogether another signal. There are only 2 signals, but there are 10 hydrogen. That means the 10 hydrogens are present in butane as 2 set. That means the 2 CH3 are in same chemical environment, and therefore all the 6 CH3 will give this signal. You can see this is high intensity 260. This is due to 6 protons, and the 2 CH2 are identical, and therefore all the 4 protons will give this signal, and this is due to the 4 CH2 proton, this is due to the 6 CH3 protons of butane, right? And therefore though there are 10 hydrogen, they are split into 6 and 4, and therefore the signal intensity will also be 2:3. That is the intensity ratio, right? Other things we can see in the splitting pattern, as I said already, that we will see later, but we will explain here. The splitting pattern, the CH3 proton, there is adjacent CH2. There are 2 protons adjacent to it. Though it may be this CH3 have 2 proton, that CH3 have 2 proton, you should not calculate it is 4. It is only signal, but adjacent vicinity, in vicinity there are only 2 protons, but the other 2 proton is somewhat distance. It is not within the range of 2 to 3 Armstrong, and therefore actually the splitting is only by the CH2, one CH2, not the other CH2, and therefore 2 protons are coupling with this CH3, and therefore it will, when 2 using n+1 formula, and therefore it will split into 3 and you get a triplet. Here similarly, it is the signal of CH2 protons, but adjacent to CH2 there is a CH3. There is a CH3 adjacent to the proton, and on the other side there is a CH2, and therefore here it is a CH3, here it is a CH2, both are adjacent within the range of 2 to 3 Armstrong, and therefore all the 5 protons will couple with this CH2 proton, and therefore 5 plus 1 6, and therefore the signal will split into 6. That's why it is looking so down. 1 2 3 4, right? 1, right? 1 2 3, no, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 septet. Why it is septet? CH2, there are CH2 CH3, therefore it splits into, right? It is due to the 3 to 5 protons. Okay, it has to split into sextet. I have to think why it is like that, right? This is another example. Here we have used the number of signal. Now let us see the chemical shift value. You can see the ethanol, it is hydrogen present are connected to OH. You can see that this is the signal. You can see the chemical shift value. Actually this is a different spectrum, and therefore the signal actually should be here, right? The chemical shift value, you can see here, due to the presence of heteroatom, the shift the values are different. You can see here it is 0.8, it is 1.2, here you can see 1. But here carbonyl is there, but the chemical shift value, it is due to presence of electronegative. When there is electronegative atom, the signal will shift towards a higher value. The shift towards higher value is called downfield. downfill, that is called de-shielding. That is, these are the different words are used. And therefore, right, the presence of oxygen in this molecule shift the signal to higher values. Here around 3.7, here around 2.6, and this will shift. Usually when there is the protons, usually if they don't have any interruption, they will be between 0 to 1. So all the free protons without any electronegative atoms or any electron cloud to disturb them, they will give signal around 1, that is below 0 to 1. In this range actually it absorbs. Anything above 1 is due to any chemical environment, may be due to double bond, or may be due to electronegative atom, may be due to hydrogen bonding, may be any polar effect, any polar or any effect, any electrostatic effect, any effect that will shift the signal to higher values, right? That we are going to see one by one. The presence of alcoholic signal, you can see here this much, it will go up to 4, right? You can also see the signal shift due to pi electrons. This is a spectrum of ethylene. Ethylene, CH2, double bond CH2, all the 4 protons are in same environment, therefore all the 4 protons together gives only one signal. But you can see the chemical shift value, it is above 5. This is above 5. Usually the alkyl protons we get at 0.8, earlier we got at 0.8. This is butane, there is no electronegative atom, nothing, and the signals are around 1 to, right, around 1. This is 0.9, it is 1.2, it is very low. But here ethylene, the same, it is also hydrocarbon, but the presence of double bond, it pulls the signal to above 5, highly de-shielded proton, right? Similarly, this is a signal of ethyl bromide, and the presence of bromine, you can see the CH2 that pulls the signal to 3.5. Can you able to see here the B, it is a quadrat, this is a quadrat, this is a triplet, and this pulls the signal here around 3.5, right? You can see here this is the signal of benzene. The presence of 3 double bond and 3 double bond, they are delocalized with 3 double bond. It is an aromatic system, it is a special case, and therefore the signal shift around 7.5 or 7 above 7, right? 7.2 is the value. Highly de-shielded proton, the presence of benzene ring, this is what is called ring current. This is due to the ring current. In ethylene also we saw a ring current, that's why they are highly de-shielded protons. And any signal around in this region 7 to 8 or 6.8 in this region, that will show the presence of a benzene ring. And the intensity of all the 6 protons are in same environment, and therefore all of them give only one signal. Okay, this is another example of a chemical shift where the OH proton, I am talking about OH, this is acetic acid, the CH3 proton gives signal here. You can see here it is around 1.5, there is no much difference in that. But you can see here the acid proton, due to the hydrogen bonding, very strong hydrogen bonding or polarity, that makes above 10, and the value is above 11 actually, acid, highly de-shielded, COO minus charge. That charge difference makes the signal to pull to this extent, highly de-shielded. This is another signal where you can see this is the CH signal of present in aldehyde. This is the spectrum of acetaldehyde. The CH3 remains here, but CHO, the hydrogen present in the carbonyl aldehyde, that gives a signal close to 10, right? These are all some examples of chemical shift. The chemical shift, that is the nature of atoms, the nature of electron cloud pulls the signal downfield. Right, another thing we have to see the multiplicity. As we have already explained, the multiplicity gives information, as I said earlier. These two CH3 together gives this signal, right? These two CH2 together gives these signals. Since there is adjacent to this CH3 only two protons are there, these two protons couple with this to split the proton into 3, 2 plus 1. Number of neighboring, multiplicity is equal to number of neighboring protons. Multiplicity, for multiplicity you have to see neighboring. If CH3 is giving signal, its neighbor is CH2, and the CH2 is 2, and according to the formula 2 plus 1, and therefore it will split into 3. It is split into 3. It is called as a triplet. And you can see here CH2. If this is the signal of these two CH2, there are 6 protons adjacent to it. Here in CH3 there is no 6 proton, but here CH2 there are 6 protons, and therefore it is splitted into what? Splitted into a septet. This is there are 6 plus 1 7. That's why you get a septet. Another important point, you can derive structure using all those information. In some cases, if you can't be able to derive structure, distinguish between especially the stereoisomers, cis trans, you can use this coupling constant to derive the structure. Then what is called coupling constant? The difference between the two peaks, the distance between these two peaks is called the coupling constant. In a peak, the distance will always be constant. The distance between these two signal in a multiplet, the distance between these two signal, these two is same. This distance and this distance is always same. That's why it is called coupling constant. For one signal, it is not for multiple signals. It will be different. The distance between these two peak and these two peak will be different. But between the multiplet, the distance between each node will be always constant. That is called coupling constant. It is due to the effect of coupling. All of them are called J coupling. It is due to the distance between the two nuclei that couple. That is called the coupling constant. These coupling constant values also give some information about the structure that we can see in the next slide. The magnitude of coupling constant identify the coupling partner and provides information on dihedral angle, all those things, and stereochemistry can be inferred using this. For example, here you can see if it is a geminal coupling, the coupling constant value will be around 2 to 3. Geminal coupling, that means if two hydrogen present in same carbon, that can also couple if they are present in two different environments. If here it is R group, due to stereochemistry, this hydrogens are not same, even though if they are present in the same carbon, but they are electronically different. Because if you think here there is a chlorine, this hydrogen is present adjacent to chlorine, but this hydrogen is present adjacent to hydrogen, and therefore these two are not the same. Electronically these two are, chemically these two are different, and chemically, or when they are chemically different, automatically they will be magnetically different, and magnetically different nuclei will give separate signal. Even if this is CH2, two hydrogen present in same carbon, though it is present in same carbon, these two will give different signals, and since they give different signal, they will also couple each other. This coupling is called as a geminal coupling. The geminal coupling, the distance between them will be around 2 to 3 heads. Geminal coupling can always be in this range. If it is vicinal coupling, in cis, these two are called vicinal coupling. In cis, the two hydrogens are close to each other on one side of the double bond. If this is coupling is taking place, then the coupling constant value will be around 10 to 15. If it is trans, if the coupling is between these two hydrogen that are present trans to each other, the coupling constant value will be above 15 Hertz. And this difference can able to identify between 600 trans isomer in the compound. This usually we get as a question in a PG NMR. How would you differentiate between cis trans isomerism? And the answer is using coupling constant value. Right, you can see the chemical shift range here. I have explained the chemical shift value, but this table will explain which compound gives in which range. Right, carboxylic acid usually above 10 to 12. Aldehyde hydrogen is around 10, and you can see aromatics from 8 to 6.5 to 8 in this range aromatic, and you can see phenolic starts from 4 to 8 in the different region, and you can see all those. You can see this table is available in many books. You can refer the chemical shift value to see which kind of proton is that. And there is one more important factor in NMR, that is called the nuclear Overhauser effect. The coupling, usually what we have seen is coupling between, this is through bond coupling, we say bond coupling. J coupling is, otherwise they are called as J coupling, otherwise they are called one bond coupling, because the coupling between protons occurs through bond, that is 2 to 3 Armstrong or 4 Armstrong or 5 Armstrong, 6 Armstrong, whatever that is. When the proton comes together through bond, then this type of coupling will occur. This coupling we usually see in NMR. But in some cases, due to molecular arrangement, there is a possibility of if two protons come close to each other, but there is no bond between them, there is a coupling between these two takes place, but this coupling is not leading to splitting of the signal, but this leading to there is change in intensity of the signal. This type of effect is called nuclear Overhauser effect, and this coupling takes place through space. If the proton comes in the proximity of one another around 5 to 6 Armstrong. If more than that, there is no coupling. If the proton comes in proximity or in the range of 5 to 6 Armstrong, there is a transfer of energy during the relaxation process, and this transfer of energy leads to diminishing of one signal and intensifying of another signal, and this effect is called as a nuclear Overhauser effect. This is called as a no bond coupling or dipolar coupling. This is an example here. This hydrogen and these two hydrogen are structurally far away from each other, but due to the structural arrangement, that is due to proton, you can take an example of protein folding. Due to folding of the molecule, if these two hydrogen comes in proximity around 5 to 6 Armstrong, then here you can see it is a 5 Armstrong. If it is come closer to that much extent, that one signal will, you can see here, this is regular spectrum expected. This hydrogen has to give one signal, that hydrogen has to give another signal. But due to this nuclear Overhauser effect, one signal will get reduced, another signal will get intensified. This is called as a nuclear Overhauser effect. That can also be studied using a different technique called nuclear Overhauser effect spectroscopy, to study the proximity of spatial interaction of protons in the molecules. That is called as NOESY. It is another an important 2D technique to study the spatial interaction of protons. Right, there is also called a decoupled spectrum. We have seen a number of signals, we have seen multiplicity of the signal, chemical shift value of the signal, all those signal gives information. What if even by recording high resolution NMR spectra, if the molecule is little complex, if one signal comes overlaps with another signal, that means two singlets may look like a doublet, single doublet. That confusions are possible, or two doublets can look like a quadruplet. The signal clarity may be. In order to avoid this kind of disturbance, what you can do, the coupling actually makes the signal to split. You can decouple. You can avoid coupling. You can prevent coupling to take place. In such cases, all the protons gives only one signal. Now you can very well know how many signals are there. The multiplicity will be avoided by this technique, spin decoupling technique. How are they doing? During relaxation, actually it couples with the other signal. If one proton is not allowed to relax and a strong pulse is radio frequency pulse is given separately to given to that proton, and it is not allowed to relax, then this proton signal, another proton will not couple with that, and that will give signal and as a singlet. Similarly, if this proton irradiated separately and that proton is recorded, this proton is not allowed to relax and that proton is recorded, and therefore if this proton is relaxed, then you will get a signal, and the multiplicity is avoided and you get a number of signal, that will give number of signal in the compound. You can get a clear spectrum, some clarity to have number of signals. Right, then the last part is how will you record NMR spectra. Usually I give this information. For recording NMR spectra, you have to mention the solvent, because solvent plays an important role. Usually the solvents are CdCl3, heavy water, and there are DMSO or the solvent usually used. There are some other solvents that are used for the compound. Usually CdCl3 is mostly used. If your compound is not soluble in CdCl3, then you have to dissolve in DMSO to record an NMR spectra. The resolution of the spectrum is important, that you cannot specify, but you have to go for which kind of if you feel your compound is a bulky molecule and going to an institute which has very low frequency 100 MHz instrument recording, there won't give you. That you have to choose in which institute you want to give your spectrum. That depends upon your molecule, that you have to decide. Right, then the liquid or solid both are recorded using NMR, and all of them are dissolved in solvent before recording the spectrum. And specify the technique if you want what you want. Do you want proton NMR, or do you want C13 NMR, or do you want a decoupled spectrum? All those things you have to specify before then you have to look for the possibilities, whether they have the facility to record decoupled spectrum, they have the facility to have record C13, all this. The instrument that records proton cannot record C13. There must be some arrangement change has to be made in order to record C13, because the proton and C13 will not come into resonance at the same time, and therefore they do not disturb each other. Therefore, in order to record the air spectra, you need a different instrument for them. Or if you are using the same instrument, and therefore you have to make some arrangement to record C13 NMR. And therefore, all these things you may have to specify in order to record an NMR spectra. With this, let us wind up. Please watch all those videos for the basics. I have given more videos for NMR because NMR is a wide techniques, more principles involved. I think I have given some glimpses of that, and that is used to find further structural elucidation of the compounds. The remaining some of them, if I left, we will see in the next class, and we will also we will go to the structural elucidation of the compounds using we will in the next video we shall take some of the NMR spectrum and we try to interpret each peak, and later we will go to structural elucidation. After we finish structural elucidation, we shall see some of the 2D NMR technique. Right, now seeing 2D NMR is not essential because we are not dealing with bulky or protein molecule like that. We don't deal with here. For structural elucidation, this normal 1D technique for simple molecules, this 1D technique is enough. Therefore, for the simple and moderately complicated molecules, UV, IR, NMR, 1D technique is enough. Therefore, we will finish the structural elucidation of a variety of compounds, and later after the structural elucidation, we shall see some of the 2D techniques at the end of this course. Thank you very much. Watch all the videos and attend the quiz that will be following today. Thank you very much.